G'day guys and gal. The Grey Knights are, to put it lightly, pretty clutch for the Imperium. They were the Emperor and Malkador's final contingency, when they accepted that all was lost and even victory would mean both of their deaths. They also knew that the Primarchs were an extremely finite resource. Once a loyalist Primarch was gone, whether it be in 100 years, 1,000 or 10,000 years after the heresy, they weren't coming back. Well, I mean they are, but that's besides the point. The problem with this isn't losing the loyalist Primarch's ability to command or administer, it was losing the Imperium's greatest weapon against the Demon Primarchs. It's often said that the only thing that can kill a Primarch is another Primarch, and while this isn't technically true, it may as well be. So the Grey Knights were created, space marines with blood of the Emperor running through their veins, who were so good at killing demons that they became a wildly effective tool against the Demon Primarchs, and are the only reason why the Demon Primarchs haven't been able to do a whole lot. But who are the founding members of this legendary order and what happened to them? Before we get started, I know I said we'd be doing weekly Major Mini releases, however today we're kind of doing the reverse of that, as in the next 72 hours, I will delist the Grey Slayer, one of the OG Major Minis. I can't say why he's been delisted, but we do have a fair bit of stock left of him, so I wanted to clear that out and also give you guys a chance to pick up this model before he's gone forever. This one does hurt a bit, as the Grey Slayer is our best-selling non-Big E model, and I will drink lots of beers tonight to honor his passing. While you're there, feel free to check out the rest of the range. We have a shitload of incredible tabletop models that you can use to add a unique flair to your army, build a new one around, or just have something sick to paint, all without costing an arm or a leg. We use our own custom resin which fucking slaps, like the detail is insane, and we're even running a 21,500 USD painting competition, the largest ever painting prize pool that you can enter. On top of that, yes there's more, we offer a pre-painted service, so if you like a Major Mini but can't paint or don't have the time to paint it, you can get it fully custom to your specs. The Grey Slayer will also be available as a part of that service for the next 72 hours as well before being taken down. But yeah guys, last 72 hours of the Grey Slayer, let's send them off in style, link is below. Today we'll go over the founders of the Grey Knights, who they were and what happened to them if it's known. Let's get into it. To give a very quick lore recap of how the Grey Knights were formed, the Emperor and Malkador had contingency after contingency. They had planned for if their plans failed, and they had plans if those contingencies for those plans failed. For example, the Emperor's plan was to create a human webway. When Magnus fucked it, his next contingency was to get Magnus to sit on the throne as a battery. When Magnus fucked that up again, his next contingency was to kill Horus. When he realized that wasn't going to go so well, his next contingency was to become the Dark King. When he realized that was a bad idea, he just kind of winged it and hoped for the best. However, he and Malkador also knew that there was a solid chance that this would all go to shit, so their ultimate contingency was for Malkador to collect a handful of brilliant mortals and space marines from across the galaxy. The space marine could be from any legion, traitor or loyalist. In fact, the traitor ones were almost preferred, as it showed that they had the willpower to reject their Primarch and legion because of their loyalty to the Emperor. These marines were turned into Malkador's Knights Errant and were sent on special missions, while the humans would eventually go on to form the Inquisition. When the Siege of Terra began, Malkador gathered his surviving Knights Errant. Those who were psychic were sent to Titan alongside a shitload of tech and psychomenials to found the Grey Knights. They even had their gene seed removed and replaced with gene seed taken directly from the Emperor. The non-psycho Knights Errant were given a different directive: kill as many traitors as possible. Marines like Nathaniel Garro and Garviel Loken fell into the latter category, so that is where these boys in silver come from. But who were the OGs? First we have Janus, the first Grandmaster of the Grey Knights. Janus was a special boy. Originally he was a thousand son called Reviel Arvida, who was lucky enough not to be on Prospero when it fell to the wolves. He was saved by the White Scars and remained a loyalist. However, his body was falling to the flesh change, thus Malkador bound him with the noble shard of Magnus to try and create a backup Magnus that could hopefully power the Golden Throne. Jagadai also got involved and kind of sabotaged the binding, ensuring Reviel would become Janus on his own terms, not just to become a slave to Malkador. The result was Janus, a demi-Primarch of immense power. Although he could not go on to be a battery, Malkador saw the potential in him and made him the first Grandmaster of the Grey Knights. Now we don't actually see him beyond the heresy, however his tomb is on Titan, which means at some point he died. There is actually a solid theory that the Grandmaster of the Grey Knights is kind of like the Avatar. When one dies, the noble shard of Magnus will then merge with a new Grey Knight. This would explain why Kaldor Drago is so overpowered, and it would also be such a waste for the noble shard of Magnus to just be gone because a dude died off page. I expect we will see Janus again at some point, maybe during the Scouring. The next founder was Epimetheus, and this guy's fate we do know, and it fucking sucks for him. His original name was likely Nemean, a legendary Dark Angel warlord who became the first Lord of the Black Shields, marines who had forsaken their legion. Now it isn't 100% confirmed that Epimetheus is the Nemean, but we do know Epi was a Dark Angel, and the Nemean is the only Dark Angel Knights Errant we know of. However, Epimetheus actually has a lot of lore post-heresy, and even into the current setting. So when the Grey Knights entered the setting post-heresy, Epi went on a mission to seal a Chaos Gate on Pythos, which was the world Mardale, aka Chaos Jesus, originally was released from during the heresy. The battle was harder than a wordbearer at a child daycare center. However, Epi prevailed. He then sealed himself in stasis on the world to ensure that if the threat ever returned, he would be there. Anyway, it returned. As Abaddon wanted to unlock the lock, Epi fought like a man possessed possessed, doing his best and thwarting Abaddon pretty hard. However, he was captured. Abaddon proceeded to rip out his gene seed and black carapace, sew his eyes and mouth shut, and then grafted a blank to his back. As he is a psyker, this puts Epi in constant agony, however he cannot scream. Abaddon then traded Epi to Fulgrim to use as a vessel and plaything, so Epi is having a really bad time. Rumor has it that the Dark Angels have heard of his plight and also know he was originally a Dark Angel, so are trying to save him. But we will need to see what becomes of that. Overall, he's having a really bad time. Then we have Chiron, who is believed to be the Night Lord Fel Zardost. Fel was a Terran-born Night Lord, aka a good one. Fel actively saw and tried to prevent the fall of his legion into depravity, not even in like a I want to be a loyalist sense, just more so in a sense that they're all becoming scumbag assholes. Fel eventually threw hands with Sevatar over this and was expelled from the legion, returning to Terra and exiling himself. However, the agents of Malkador caught wind of him and recruited him. Fel was what the Night Lords should have been, judges and executioners, followers of uncompromising justice. Fel would prove to be an effective Knights Errant, completing a number of tough missions. However, we don't get to see much of his Grey Knight career. All we do know is that his body is entombed within the Tomb of Eight, which is a section of the Grey Knight catacombs reserved for the founding member of the Grey Knights. Next we have Coyos, who is confirmed to be Tylos Rubio, an Ultramarine librarian. Rubio was exiled from his legion for using his psychic powers on Kalth to save his fellow Ultramarines. As the Edict of Nicaea was still in effect, his brothers saw this as a betrayal of the Emperor. Thus Rubio joined Malkador's Knights Errant and befriended Garo and Loken. Rubio was actually one of the first Knights Errant to be recruited and took part in most missions. By far his grimmest mission was when he was ordered to go to Baal and tell the few remaining Blood Angels to hand over all Legion assets to fellow loyalist legions and disband. As it was believed Sanguinius had died at Cygnus Prime, the Blood Angels on Baal were prepared to kill Rubio until a message came saying that Sanguinius was indeed alive. Good fucking timing, holy shit. His fate as a Grey Knight is unknown, however I can't find anything that says his corpse is within the Tomb of Eight, which was explicitly said to house both Janus and Chiron. Ogan was another founder of the Grey Knights who was a Raven Guard before he joined their ranks. There were two potential options here for who he could be, Balsar or Antaka. However, I'm leaning more towards Balsar as he was the chief librarian of the Raven Guard and has a bunch of lore, whereas Antaka was more of a side character for one book. Now Malkador was a bit of an asshole when it came to testing the Grey Knight candidates. For Balsar, he ordered a custodian to hunt and kill Balsar for being a psyker. Balsar fled and one of his close friends, an Imperial Fist, tried to stop the custodian but was killed. Balsar enters a rage and summons his psychic powers. However, instead of seeing anger in the custodian's face, he just saw disappointment. Balsar remembered his oaths and deactivated his power, thus passing the test. Once again, after becoming a Grey Knight, we don't know what happened to Ogan. I assume GW has a bunch of Grey Knight lore ready to go for when the range refresh happens. However, his corpse has not been mentioned to be within the Tomb of Eight. To be clear, that doesn't mean it's not there, it just hasn't been directly stated to be there. This next founder of the Grey Knights was a fucking beast, Yapto, but his original name was Severian and he was a lunar wolf. Severian was a latent psyker, meaning that although he couldn't shoot lightning out of his dickhole like a true space wizard, he could use the warp to make himself extremely stealthy and fast. Like he could just appear and disappear out of nowhere, making him extremely deadly. He was stationed on Terra when the heresy broke out, acting as a representative of the Sons of Horus. He was in prison for obvious reasons, but managed to escape alongside representatives of other traitor legions. Now these guys were actually loyalist, but they were also salty at getting imprisoned. They wanted to escape Terra and return to their legions to see why they went traitor. Some even swore to kill their own Primarchs if it was shown that they did indeed betray the Emperor. Severian was the only one out of all of these guys to survive, where he was eventually captured by Yasu Nagasena, a legendary space marine hunting samurai, and he was recruited into the Knights Errant. Him getting recruited was pretty funny. Garviel Loken was sent to where Severian was known to hang out to try to speak to him, but Severian wanted to play a game. Basically the game was, if you can find me, I'll join you. Legit hide and seek. Garviel was like, fuck this, and just turned around and left, causing Severian to reveal himself and be salty. Garviel was like, firstly, you're a stealth wizard, I was not going to find you. Secondly, hey, there you are, found ya. Severian would be a key member of the Knights Errant until the Siege of Terra, where he became a Grey Knight. Sometime later, Severian, now Yapto, would die in battle, with Abaddon personally witnessing his death. Now we have Yoten, a space wolf rune priest who became a founding Grey Knight. We don't know too much about his life as a Grey Knight, other than the fact that he tried to hide his Fenrisian accent when he became a Knights Errant, which I imagine would have ended up with him sounding super retarded. The leading theory is that he is Fjodor Strongren, a member of the Watch Packs who had the unfortunate task of watching over the Night Lords for signs of heresy. Fjodor and his pack were immediately attacked and murdered, but killed a surprisingly high amount of Night Lords during it. Only Fjodor survived, but was so badly mutilated you could barely tell what he used to be. He was sent back to the Imperium as a message, however Malkador's knights recovered him and went through extreme efforts to restore him, with Malkador specifically telling them not to put him in a dreadnought. I believe Malkador saw the potential in him as a Grey Knight and was willing to put in a ton of effort to see that potential fulfilled. And finally we have Satri, whose real name was Vardas Ison. For some reason, Vardas despised Sanguinius and wouldn't tell anyone his original legion. As a Blood Angel, although he did keep a small token from his legion, Vardas was a highly effective agent of Malkador and was present for most major missions the Knights Errant undertook. It's not clear why he hated Sanguinius, as he was probably the only person who did so. However, as a Psyker, he would have had a better understanding of the Red Thirst than most Blood Angels, so perhaps blame Sanguinius for the curse, or perhaps blame Sanguinius for hiding it from them and secretly culling afflicted Blood Angels and then covering it up. That's just my theory though. If there is one takeaway from this video, it's that there is a shitload of untapped Grey Knight lore ready to be uncovered. GW, you better do your thing here. Release those non-shit looking new Grey Knights that I know you're cooking, and then release a bunch of dope ass books with the founders of the Order in them. You'll make some money, trust me. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the Grey Slayer. We're clearing out the stock. He will only be around for 72 hours, or if he sells out faster than that, then yeah, never coming back. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.